during the difficult times and political instability occasioned by the absence of late Governor Oluwarotimi Akeredolu, whose passing, he said, was a great loss to the people and the state.
I'm thanking you, sir, because of the role you played during the political crisis in those states some months back, when some political gladiators, as a result of the ill health of the late governor, decided to hit the polity by making an impeachment move against the deputy governor, Osrc, which led to a lot of crisis. Members of the public, the whole system was in crisis. Voices from every barrage of negative news, threats, protests, and the likes. But you stood at the time when you called your members to have a meeting, and all of them are here today. The majority of them are here, and you wrote a letter in form of a communique to the president. And upon receiving that, the president made a move and called for a meeting, and was able to resolve the issue on the time by instructing all of us to do the meeting by allowing the Constitution to prevail.
While acknowledging the challenges ahead, Governor Aiyedatiwa assured the elder statesmen of his commitment to continue the late governor's vision and uphold his legacies. He assured the elders of his administration's dedication to addressing infrastructure needs of the state and affirmed his commitment to inclusive development of the state.
I want to assure every one of us that our primary mandate as a government, which is the welfare and security of lives and property of the people, we can ensure.
Olu of Iluabo, Oba Olufalaye, commended the state's positive leadership history, including the establishment of the Amotekun security outfit aimed at securing lives and property within the region. His emphasis on preserving the Yoruba language echoed concerns about educational reforms and urged the governor to consider prioritizing efforts towards language preservation, particularly in schools, as a fundamental aspect of cultural preservation.
If I were to plead that the government considers extending the road from the airport junction through Eleyowo, not double carriage, just 20 feet wide. Eleyowo, Iluabo, Bolonduro, Alayere to Ayede.
An elder statesman, Bashorun Sende Arugbofa, commiserated with the governor following the demise of his predecessor and congratulated him on his elevation as governor. He emphasized the need for immense goodwill for success and pledged their support to achieving success.
As long as I'm here, God give you the energy and strength, the opportunity to make your mark. History is there. And don't forget those who assisted you during trying times.
Pa Reuben Fashoranti, who tasked the residents of the state on continued support for Governor Aiyedatiwa, conveyed his support, goodwill, and offered prayer for prosperity of the state. The event reflected a shared hope of a prosperous administration in Ondo State under the watch of Governor Lucky Aiyedatiwa. Wahab Bankole, Osrc News.
Traditional rulers across Ondo State have been enjoined to continue to support the state government in the task of entrenching development at the grassroots. Governor Lucky Aiyedatiwa, who made the call, said the roles of the traditional institutions remain integral to the overall development of Nigeria. Aiyedatiwa posits that Ondo State government will continue to accord traditional rulers a pride of place to contribute their quota towards the development of the state.
When you talk of peace and security in a particular civilization, the traditional institutions, they are the best to do that. And it's only when you have the grassroots mobilization, you'll be able to know what they need at the grassroots through the canvases. Or it relates more at the closer range with people than those of us that are here at the capital city, at the seat of government. So we cannot but relate with you because you are partners in governance and in progress, in development. That is the way it should be. I remember when the budget is to be crafted, they have to do bottom up. They went to the whole community, interface with the rurals and the various stakeholders so that we'll be able to know their need. It's for everybody. And Ondo State is not just Akure, the capital city. Ondo State comprises of the entire 18 local government and 33 LCDAs. That is where the people are residing. Yes, we have rich population in Akure, but the over 4 or 5 million population we're talking about in Ondo State, they are not in Akure. They are spread all across the state. So we must interface with the traditional institutions to know their needs and their various local government and LCDs. So we are partners in progress, in peace, in development, in every way, because we cannot do much without relating.
Who becomes the deputy governor of Ondo State? That is one question dominating public discourse in the Sunshine State following the assumption of Lucky Aiyedatiwa as governor. In this report, Osrc x-rays the permutations, conjectures, and the history through the lens of residents and political watchers in the state. We'll bring you that report in the course of the bulletin.
27th December 2023 remains an unforgettable day in the history of Ondo State, as the death of the then governor Oluwarotimi Akeredolu paved way for a new helmsman. Lucky Aiyedatiwa, his deputy, rose to become the substantive office bearer. Days have now gone by after the transition of power to Aiyedatiwa as the 7th civilian governor of the Sunshine State. Section 190 with the approval of the House of Assembly, appoints a new deputy governor. While the official appointment is still being awaited, residents of Ondo State and political players are already voicing their opinion on the vacant position. Who should be appointed, from which part of the state, what gender, and of which religion are some of the questions populating the discourse.
My hope and my opinion and my observation that the deputy governor should come from this Akure city.
Látọ̀wọ̀ ló ti yẹ kó ti wá. Torí tó bá ti wá látọ̀wọ̀, tá bá ti ní ìdí gómìnà ní Àkúrẹ́ bí, ara ìṣe gómìnà l'Àkúrẹ́ bí, tó bá ti wá látọ̀wọ̀, Ọ̀wọ̀ ló yẹ kó ti wá.
Some political watchers in the state also bear their thoughts.
Prerogative. He has the right to pick whoever he believes he can work with. Don't forget that a deputy governor needs to show absolute support and loyalty to his boss. So he must actually take his time to know who he believes he can perfectly work with, and that one will determine where the deputy governorship choice will come from, either from the central senatorial districts or from the northern senatorial districts. The two districts are open for him to pick, so it depends on whoever is actually eyeing that can work for him. We don't compensate government offices. We don't use to compensate people. You scout for those people that you believe can work with you. He is from a party that controls the federal. I cannot rule out the influence of the federal government, of his party at national level, or even the president, because I need to consult him very well, and he will need his backing since they are from the same party. So we can't rule that one out. It's a possibility. It's part of the game of the game of politics.
Some politicians and social commentators also identified the need to place priority on competence against mediocrity or undue political patronage.
If they are going to be partners in progress, he needs to look out for competence first and also for political propriety and balance. So if you want to look at it from the balance point of view politically, now the governor is from the south. Then the way it was switched before, it was between north and south. Now, if it were to be because of the disruption as a result of the unfortunate incidents of the demise of the former governor, then I would of the tenure not to be seen as being altered. In the past, it was Agagu from the south and central deputy governor. So, but now I think for the purpose of when central was governor, the deputy went up north.
Well, someone who will work for the benefit of Ondo State, someone who will take the interests of our people as his primary concern, somebody that will do the best for the. And I believe the governor is working around the clock to ensure that the right person is picked. Generally, zoning shouldn't really matter, but good governance. The person that has the right quality, that has the capacity, that has the character to lead us.
When eventually appointed, the new deputy governor will join Mr. Lucky Aiyedatiwa to see out the current 4-year term, which ends in February 2025. Sahid Aribisa. The government has pledged to make education more accessible to Nigerians. The Minister of State for Education, Yusuf Sanono, pledged this at the inauguration of the National Open University of Nigeria, Surulere Campus, Ojuelegba in Lagos. Mr. Sanono said the facility, which was the federal government has revised still in the education sector. The Minister of Education, Professor Tahir Maman, has revealed that security agencies will go after Nigerians found with fake certificates from foreign institutions. The minister said government will not stop at the suspension of certificates from Togo and Benin Republic alone. Rather, the suspension
Bangladesh.
now to the foreign scene. The main opposition party is boycotting the votes after Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina rejected the demand that she should resign and hand power to a neutral authority. She is running for a fourth consecutive term. At least 10 people have died in the anti-government protests since October. Kemisol Automo has details.
The general election in Bangladesh is just few days away, but there are hardly any signs of
The government doesn't need the general masses. For the last 15 years, we have not been able to is that. Don't you think we have the desire to participate in the voting process? Our votes are cast by others.
The main opposition party says millions of its members are facing a government crackdown and more than 20,000 have been in jail since late October. The opposition's key demand is that the election be held under a caretaker administration, but the government has rejected that. The opposition alliance says it will stay on the street until the government is ousted.
They have already executed the election process weeks ago by publicly determining the person who is going to be the mayor of whichever sits. This has been decided not in the ballot box, but sitting in the capital in the office of the highest executive of the country. This is the paradox.
During her 15 years in power, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has been credited with turning around the economy, and her supporters are betting on her economic success. Sheikh Hasina says she wants the January 7 national election to be free, fair, and neutral.
We have secured people's right to vote through struggle and movement. They think they will be able to take those rights away and stop the election process, but they don't have that courage, nor will they succeed in doing so.
Some analysts say without the Bangladesh Nationalist Party and other opposition groups taking part, the election may not meet legal requirements, and many in the global community may question its credibility. Kemisol Automo, Osrc News.
After a politically turbulent 2023, Latin America is gearing up for another round of presidential elections this year. Much like the rest of the world, this region has struggled with post-pandemic inflation, growing poverty, and increasingly polarized societies, often leaving voters with few choices at the polls. Sonny Clowley has details.
Campaigns are at full throttle across Latin America ahead of presidential elections this year. At least 6 nations, from Uruguay to the Dominican Republic, are due to elect new leaders amid dismal regional economic growth.
The biggest challenge for Latin America in the short term is preserving democracy despite the economic and political adversities, especially as polls show disenchanted citizens support democracy less and less.
In El Salvador, an emboldened Nabuel is expected to cruise to re-election as president after circumventing constitutional restrictions that forbid him from running. His supporters him as an autocrat. Tired of decades of violence, Salvadorians have overlooked accusations of human rights abuses in exchange for peace. Continuity is also what Mexico's ruling party is hoping for in June's election, set to be the largest in the country's history. Further south in Venezuela, polls suggest opposition candidate Maria Corina Machado has an overwhelming lead over President Nicolas Maduro. But few believe Maduro will relinquish power, no matter what the ballots say.
There are no democratic conditions in Venezuela for a competitive election. Basically, the ruling party will win, and that will be that.
The country remains the source of record number of migrants reaching the U.S. border. Hundreds of thousands of Latin Americans have already made their opinions clear long before the in a region still heavily affected by U.S. politics. Perhaps just as influential to Latin America this year will be the race to the White House in November. Sunday Kolawole, Osrc News.
Russia is planning to spend more on defense in 2024 than it's done since the Cold War. The Kremlin is going to direct an extra $45 billion to the military and security forces. It says it needs the increase because it's facing what it calls a hybrid war being waged by the West, as well as its campaign in Ukraine.
Russia's 2024 budget speaks for itself. Around 40% of all federal spending will go towards defense and law enforcement. More weapons are needed for battlefield in Ukraine, as the Kremlin is adamant it is not winding down its military campaign against its neighbor. Factories are switching to two.
It's basically a war budget. I mean, the country is fighting a war. Stocks are depleted, weapons and munitions and other supplies have been depleted. And there's a massive buildup of military production and procurement.
Arms production can stimulate the economy, and Russia is no exception. But economic and social programs are undefended, although the 2020 on education and housing. The military expenditure forces aside almost all other priorities, education in particular, and could lead to Russia lagging behind other developing countries in the future.
What are defence costs? These are the costs of producing tanks, rockets and other munitions sent to the front lines and then more often than not are turned into a heap of twisted metal. From the economic point of view, this is burned cash because the final product is being destroyed.
Then there is the threat of a global arms race triggered by the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, while most arms control agreements between Moscow and Washington are more dead than alive.
Ukraine can't win an arms race against Russia on its own, but it's going to still have different kind of support from other rich nations, industrial nations. And that's not a very good scenario because there's going to be a Cold War and arms race internationally.
Nearly 2 years into Russia's special operation in Ukraine, the economy is still growing.
And with that story, we've come to the end of World Afternoon. Good afternoon. Thanks for watching.